Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has used his Independence Day address to put China and Xi Jinping directly in the spotlight, accusing Beijing of remaining silent as Russia continues its war against Ukraine. In a sharp message aimed beyond Moscow and directly at one of Russia's most important international partners, Zelensky called on China to use its influence, particularly when it comes to nuclear threats, and made clear that Kyiv expects Beijing to do more.
China must no longer stay silent. When someone dresses up in a sailor suit and a garrison cap and, poorly pronouncing some words, talks about a nuclear strike, China must react, must cool the ardor. China must prove its ambition to be one of the world leaders, and not only economically and technologically, but civilisationally.
Zelensky's challenge comes against the backdrop of mounting criticism of China from Ukraine, the United States, and European governments over Beijing's relationship with Moscow. Western governments have repeatedly accused China of helping sustain Russia's war effort through trade, technology, and dual-use goods, with the G7 describing Beijing as a decisive enabler of Russia's war. Ukraine, meanwhile, has repeatedly argued that China has the influence to push Putin toward an end to the conflict. Beijing has rejected those accusations, insisting it has not supplied lethal weapons to either side and opposing attempts to shift blame for the war onto China. And there is another reason Zelensky's message matters. China and Russia have deepened their strategic partnership during the war, with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin repeatedly presenting their relationship as a partnership with no limits to cooperation. That has led Western governments to increasingly argue that Beijing is not simply a distant observer of the conflict, but a country with significant economic and strategic leverage over Moscow. Zelensky is now publicly asking China to turn that leverage into pressure on Putin. China has not yet issued a response to Zelensky's latest remarks, but Beijing's position on the Ukraine war has remained consistent and clear. China has also repeatedly stressed that it is not a party to the conflict, while saying it supports peace talks and a political solution. Beijing rejects accusations that it has fueled the war or sought to profit from it.
Dialogue and negotiations remain the only viable way out of the crisis. We hope all parties will seize this opportunity to reach a comprehensive, lasting, and binding peace agreement. China stands ready to continue playing a constructive role alongside the international community in promoting a political solution to the crisis.
And that is where the latest message from Kyiv meets China's long-standing position. Zelensky wants Beijing to go beyond calls for negotiations and actively use its influence over Moscow, especially when Russia invokes the threat of nuclear weapons. China, meanwhile, continues to present itself as a supporter of dialogue rather than a participant in the war. So far, there is no direct Chinese response to Zelensky's Independence Day challenge, but the question is now increasingly difficult for Beijing to avoid. Will China simply continue calling for negotiations, or will Xi Jinping use his influence over Putin to help bring the war to an end?